Most of you know that it is thanks to the love and support of this community that we were able to build a village for special needs children out in Tanzania. That village now provides a safe and loving home to nearly 200 children that were living in crisis. Most of these children are special needs, but a lot of these children were homeless, and the majority have no parents or guardians in this world other than the family that this community has allowed us to create. Everything that we do to support these children is made possible by this community and those who choose to share what they can and get involved and become, as I often call it, in their own way, a percentage of the parental role for these little ones. For those of you who are already partnering with us, thank you for the love and support. But for those of you who don't know about it, everything that we do is made possible thanks to partners, those who choose to partner with our family and with it make everything that we do possible and keep our doors open for the next children who need some help or a safe and loving family home. If you'd like to hear more about our partnership program, you can do so by visiting www.sharetanzania.com/partnership. Thank you for all of the love and support, guys. We couldn't do this without you. God bless.
The angelic, the beings of great compassion, of great energy and light, who are dispatched by the Christ to assist humanity. We have in our lives open communication with the angelic, clear and open. I have seen them, I sense their presence, they have guided us, they have comforted us, they have comforted our children, they have been integral in the toolbox that Christ has gifted us to make happen what is happening in our lives for these children. Those angelic beings are for many something that is a game of belief and unbelief. But I can say this, when we go to help the heroin addicts that we bring to our addiction recovery center, if you go into the drug dens, you will get burned out if you go every day, for the environment, the atmosphere is dense and heavy. If, however, you set up an office and you invite people there, you can see to and attend to more. And the angelic are such as this. They have set up an office, but the problem is that the majority of humanity don't know how to reach that office. They don't know how to step into the presence of the angelic. And we must do something to step to them, as they too can be burnt out by the heavy density of the 3D in which we are incarnating. As such, the attainment of the office is not something you can walk towards with linear thinking. You can't get there through the process of thought. And this is the human problem the world over. We are always trying to control ourselves into unification with Christ. That is not the case. It is the cessation of the image of a controller that allows the consciousness to rise and the Christ to fill yourselves. If the image of a seeker and a controller is still dominant in the mind, there is no space for the Christ to animate the intelligence, as that image will interfere. For you have not died in Christ being born, as it must be that I must die and Christ be born in my place, as it is spoken by Paul. Before I go into the angelic beings that are in our life, and I go into the technology that they have, for they have technology, interdimensional technology. They have also 3D bio suits that they can inhabit with their consciousness, so they can carry out works in this beautiful world of ours or in this fallen world of ours, depending where your consciousness may be. The demonic, the fallen angels, have the same capacity. and the angelic forces of Christ have had to match their behavior. The technologies, the interdimensional craft that are used by the demonic, the interdimensional or the biosuits that allow their consciousness to be interdimensional and function in the 3D. The demonic, the fallen angels, have used these technologies to great effect to manipulate humanity and to enslave sentient life across the cosmos, I'm certain. The angelic have had to follow the same road so that they too can have a certain influence here. I have personally, with my own eyes, seen a biosuit that was inhabited by an angelic force. It was physically in my home, I saw it, and it arrived after I prayed in tongues for 48 hours. This understanding requires that we set our mind free. An angel with technology, a demon with technology, most certainly, yes, technology is a part of both of their walks. I also want to speak into how they have used that technology to prove to this human organism sitting here speaking that we will not be succumbed to nuclear war. Humanity will not succumb to nuclear war. And they have been with their technology, and there are US military personnel who are publicly letting everybody know that with that technology they came and they disabled nuclear missiles in the US. Those were angelic forces inhabiting the biosuits or other sentient forms of life from around the cosmos. Before I go into that, let's look at this notion of possession by a demon and by an angel. This is a good starting point to understand what I'm saying about the technology they have created, such as biosuits, and also the topic of humans being inhabited by the angelic or the demonic. An angel is said to be a messenger of light. And in our modern science, we know that photons carry with them information and messages. A photon only travels into our world on an angle of light. So a photon is a messenger particle traveling on an angle of light, and an angel is a messenger of light. Science, in short, have skimmed the surface of the workings of the angelic. And we must receive the good angles into our life and not the fallen angles. If we receive the fallen angles, the photons that we receive will negatively impact our consciousness and our way of life. If we remember that beings of a higher dimension, beings of light, angelic messenger beings of light, let's say, just for argument and visual sake, we are in the 3rd dimension and they are in the 10th dimension. Their light is emanating from them, and their light emanates not unconsciously, but it emanates with purpose. And that light, we can say, has the capacity to travel interdimensionally. And therefore, when you look out at the night sky, the light that is arriving with you could be from an interdimensional angelic force. And that light can arrive with you, it can guide you, it can inhabit your body, it can protect you. And this light is of profound importance. We must sit in the natural light of the world as much as we can when we wish to commune with our Creator. The vast majority today are consuming fallen angles. So they look at a screen, they look at a TV screen, mainstream media, they are scrolling supposed entertainment from Hollywood, which is largely demonic, and they receive these fallen angles of light, and they receive these fallen photons and messages and information, and it stimulates the human consciousness to enter states of fear. And in those states of fear, we are manageable, controllable, predictable, and we are akin to a slave. Those dense frequencies of fear also allow the fallen angles to inhabit more space inside the fallen world. They feed on that, they extract that fear-based energy and the energy that is born from there. For a human that lives in separation and fear will have a proclivity to chase the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire. and therefore they will move into sin, and when they move into sin they become dependent on the pleasure of sin, and before you know it they step into the capacity to betray the living God, to lie, to deceive. What reality is before you is the living God. When you start betraying that reality and deceiving to get your pleasure, you now separate even further. And so it is vital that we understand which angles of light, which angels we are inviting into our space, into our lives, into our family. Those angles arrive with the vessel and they enter into the body to a light reactive gland. Now, we would not need to discuss this necessarily. It's not so important, but you want to ensure that your temple receives the correct angle. You should have some inclination of how the temple is designed. Jacob, after dislocating the hip, wrestling the angel, had dislocated his lower nature. The lower nature is that which binge watches rubbish from the screen. That is the lower nature. The lower nature is that which has a proclivity to the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire. When he does that, he sees God face to face in the place they call pineal. And the pineal is a light reactive gland in the center of your head. This is not, as many Christian pastors have wrongly educated, a demonic element of humanity's life. But what is true is that a fallen angel can inhabit you through the pineal, or a Christic angel. If you receive divine guidance from the Holy Spirit, it is coming, I argue, through that gland. But if you've ever seen these videos where somebody at the very last minute steps to the left for no good reason, and then a car streams into a wall and just misses them, in those moments you can say that that person is possessed by a Christic angle, a Christic photon, a Christic angel, a guardian angel. It enters the vessel and it whispers to the intelligence to take an action. And this is a skill set that I have in my life realized allows us to take the right movements to build what we have built. Remember, this whole charity was never built on analysis and study. It was built on allowing the walk of faith, following that small intuitive whisper from the angelic. Therefore, the angel enters the body, the photon, and the person steps out of the way of danger. You have just been possessed by an angelic force. The same possession takes place for the demonic. And this is where we have the problem, is that if you have a proclivity in your frequency body, in your energy body, toward comfortable prison cell of worldly desire, it will attract the wrong angles. If you are indulging in non-stop demonic entertainment, much of which is created with ritual, satanic ritual in Hollywood, then the light arrives with you and it is seeded. These photons are seeded with demonic ritual. They go into you, they bring about depression, they bring about fear, they bring about your impulses to chase sin, and you become filled with the demonic presences. Therefore, we must learn how to ensure the correct angles arrive with us. In my own life, I have noticed that my angelic friends and supporters of the work we do have often turned up during fasting. And this is very important. When you fast, as it says in the Bible, Yeshua had fasted 40 days and his flesh was weak, but his spirit was strong. This was my own experience as this human organism sitting here who is doing its very best to speak from a lack of entanglement with a personal history, speak from a connection that I feel here and now with what I perceive to be the living God and that love of Christ. In my life, when I committed to a 40-day fast, it was certain that the spirit, the soul, I will say, had separated from the vessel. And I could see the vessel, and I understood that it was, and all of its attributes were not home. All of its, the habits and rituals of mind that I had gotten into, the addictions of the five senses that I had gotten into and called in the structure of me and personal history an image of self, all of that crumbled and went to sleep, and what was left was a potent, loving awareness of this present moment. That distance from the flesh to allow you to have strength in the spirit is vital, for you are raising into higher frequency ranges where the angelic can be in your presence without being burned out by the dense heaviness of your fleshly behavior, of your sin nature. In my own walk, and I have made videos about these beings before, there have been a persistent presence of angelic beings that were made of blue light, and they are of the Christ. And the first time I saw them, I will share this story as I've shared it before, but because there is a new addition, and that is that 8 years ago I found a little girl called Elizabeth. And Elizabeth I rescued from a witch doctor area of Tanzania where the only religion was witch doctor. And they were sacrificing people as they do, and everyone was using alcohol and drugs. And when I got there, this beautiful 2-year-old cerebral palsy girl was addicted to alcohol. She was totally hooked on it. And her mother, a raging alcoholic, was using the alcohol because the child would cry a lot as she was disabled and also now had cravings for alcohol. We tried to save the mother at that time and we could not. And so I brought Elizabeth home. But whilst I was there, I challenged the spirit that I could feel. Now back then, I lacked capacity for deliverance that I have now, largely because my ego would tangle into the work that the spirit would do. I would have an image in my mind that John was the force in some small way that was going to deliver somebody of a demon. I had an image of self that could deliver the demonic, people from the demonic. I challenged the spirit and therefore was ill-equipped. These days I'm confident that the power of Christ is able to purify any demon if we allow it to come through the vessel and the mind does not tangle with that process which is automatic and taking place through us when we are yielded and surrendered to the Christ. Therefore I have a greater confidence these days through experience and memory of this and records of this, that the power of Christ can purify any demon through any human organism so long as the organism's brain and mind does not interject and take ownership of what the spirit is doing. I was violently ill back then, however, and 2 times I vomited blood in my life. Both times were run-ins with witch doctors. The second time witch doctors wrote us threatening messages about the children in our care. I therefore that night was being prayed for by many people, and as I sat praying on a chair on my veranda, I left my body. Inexplicably and unexpectedly, I left my body. And I could see my body sitting there praying, but now I could see these beings, humanoid in shape, made of blue light. These beings beckoned me and called me, and I went with them to the main special needs children's home at the children's village where I was. And I watched as they were blowing this beautiful blue light onto these children that I'm guardian of. And some of these children have a lot of pain, they have a lot of trauma. And as with any child, that transition between consciousness and unconsciousness, or falling asleep as we call it, is frightening. That's why they want their parent with them sometimes. And this I perceived, as we are limited and can't, with the hundreds of children in our family, provide that, was something that the angelic were offering unbeknown to us all of that time. That little girl sadly died earlier this year. She died of pneumonia, which is the most common cause of death in cerebral palsy children all around the world. 2 weeks before she died, her mother, who was an alcoholic still and was 7 months pregnant, returned to the children's village. And she said, "I've come to see my daughter." For the first time in 8 years. 2 weeks later, God called Elizabeth home and she passed away. Her mother acknowledged and recognized that whatever had brought her to the village 2 weeks before her daughter's death could be spiritual. And as such, we placed her in our mindfulness-based addiction recovery program that we have going here called Faith Addiction Recovery Center. And we got her clean of alcohol, and a beautiful little girl was born who thankfully had no health complications. The mother refused to name the girl until I met her. And when I met this little girl, the mother said, "You will be the one to name her," out of love and gratitude and respect for caring for my daughter and saving me from where I was. And so I called this baby girl Angel, as the first time I ever saw the angels in this blue light form was the night that I'd rescued her sister many years ago. These beings have continued to be in our life, and I've communicated with them, and they are supporting what we do, and they are supporting our road of building what is going to be the world's biggest solution for special needs children in crisis in developing countries. They are divine allies from the Christ. We don't pray to them, we don't worship them, we don't ask for their help. We call on the living God, the Christ, the creator of all. And whatever is dispatched to us, we accept the support. Very vital. Many people get into the space where they want to pray to an angel. Never do that. There's no need for it. Now, these beings have technology. At the end of a 16-day water fast in 2022, I believe it was, my wonderful wife spoke to God and said that she was tired of the level of supernatural encounter that I was having, and she was not having it in the same abundance. Now, she was living a different road at the time, which is why I was persistently praying and fasting and living my life that way, and she was not in that space as she was breastfeeding and so forth. However, that was day 16 of a water fast, and I felt the call as the correct angle of light had arrived with the vessel as a hospitable host for the correct angle of light, the correct angel. And I told my wife we should lay outside on the grass in our garden in Germany. And as we lay there, within half an hour, a huge UFO appeared over our home. This was the day that my wife had asked for a supernatural encounter with the angelic, and a UFO appeared above our home. It appeared on the Mayan day out of time, which is said to be a day where the veils are thin between the dimensions. This craft then led to a series of downloads from the Holy Spirit in my life, and also led to me seeing with my own two physical eyes. When people ask, are there UFOs, are there aliens? I've seen them. I've seen them with my two eyes. I've seen a UFO and I've seen an alien, as you would call it. And as such, the changes in how I understood the angelic versus the demonic began to take place, and more experiences and evidence for that kept coming forward in out-of-body experience and so on. What I know now is that they, first of all, were not approaching things in this way, but the fallen angels employed technology to manipulate and harvest energy from humanity. This harvesting I've spoke of in great detail, but they feed on our fear, our low frequency. They feed on our suffering. And if they can take the light of God, which we are, and take its nature, which is love and unity and not selfishness, and bring it into a vessel of their tampering creation, slightly altered based on original creation, and into a reality that is being altered by technology as well. And if their, as false creator gods, creation can lure that light into the proclivity of sin, they get the energy that they want. It's like making Christ's light forget what it is. And that's the battle. That's the demonic battle. They are saying to God, I can make your children forget you. Watch. And largely, many of us are forgetting God. Many of us are incarnating in these bodies, uncertain if it was organic and God's will, or whether technology brought us into that, which I've discussed in my Moon Matrix videos. And we are then led into this meandering maze whereby we can go against our very core nature of Christ, and we can change into their rebellious nature, into the sin nature, from spirit to flesh, as Jesus called it. This is the battle. This is what they are trying to attain with us. Those beings, the fallen, who did this, they use interdimensional craft. They use possession of humanity, but they also use biosuits, which look like the grey alien that many have heard of. It is an opportunity for these forces of another dimension to have a physical body within the 3D. The angelic have done the same, and you can discern the difference between them. Visually, I wouldn't be able to, but by the presence, by your discernment, that can't be tampered with. Your discernment from the Holy Spirit, it can't be afflicted. And you will know by your fruits that your discernment is clear and correct. Therefore, these beings have interdimensional craft. And they have biosuits that allow them to function inside the 3D. In the 60s, to give you an example, I think it was 1967, if I'm not wrong, in a nuclear base in Montana in the US, and there was another base the same night. The military captains and I believe general that was in charge of 10 nuclear missiles has publicly spoken about the night that a great UFO appeared at the base. And when this UFO appeared at the base, it hung around and it disabled all of the nukes. It disabled all of the nuclear power that they had. It stayed a little while, then it reactivated them, and then it left. My understanding from these beings that support us is that full disclosure of the supernatural or the angelic moving inside these biosuits, these higher dimensional beings, it is not being disclosed to humanity as we are not ready. We need to grow and develop in a more organic way. However, by now, the demonic have started to come into communication with the large corporations and world leaders, and as such, there's a potentiality that full disclosure would be a better option than if humanity does go to fire those nukes. And as such, I have no fear or concern of nuclear war at all. I am certain that these beings will use their technology to disable them. I'm confident of it. The ability for man to bring into their life the presence of these angelic beings, the ability for man to welcome the correct habitat, aura, atmosphere, energy body, energy field around them that will allow the angelic to work here with more peace and with greater periods of time, falls in the lap of the responsibility of the individual. As it was with Jacob, you must separate your lower nature and dislocate your hip. You must, and it's you that must do it. No one else will do it for you. Your proclivity to the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire is a hindrance to the angelic. So you are responsible in this war. Your choices matter. Every macro decision you make matters. If you follow what I have said, many people want to know, well, what do I do to see an angel? What do I do to communicate, to hear them? First of all, you follow what Yeshua taught. You must obey the Christ's teaching. You must repent when you have accidentally or inadvertently surrendered yourself into the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire. You must offer that counter program. You must learn to be fasting, to disconnect your soul from the flesh so that you can understand what is not you and what is you that has been brought into incarnation. You must ensure you don't betray reality. You must serve the needy. You must do that. It's a necessity. Faith without works is dead. They don't save you by any measure, but they are, if you are born into faith, there should be works of right, compassionate action surrounding you, and you should delve into them as much as you can. When all of that is solidified, the frequency that you are emitting is unfavorable to the fallen angels, and at that point, you can engage in practice, such as breathing and prayer and meditation, to raise your consciousness, to raise the energy in your body, so that you can connect with these higher dimensional spaces. In my own life, I use a type of breathing where I draw the energy up through my body, and you feel this. When you are in your heart space, you feel lighter. When you are angry or pursuing the unfavorable desires that we get locked into and have all at some point been addicted to, I would imagine, your energy is further down and that lightness of heart is not there. And if you keep drawing that energy up In the same way, Jacob was now keeping his energy in his heart space and in right compassionate action, instead of having his lower nature spend it on the God of this world's desires. In that place where your hip is dislocated, and you draw that energy up, when you bring it up into the temple, as Paul said, you are the temple of God. When you raise that force inside of you of the vitality of life that you have, which is finite, it can assist you in allowing the brain to be under your control so that you can open up the frequency of what you are to commune with the angelic. People want a shortcut. People want someone to say, breathe like this, say this prayer, meditate like this, and you will see an angel, you will see an ET. And the reality is, follow what Christ said and follow it without compromise. Without compromise. It is Christ or death. It should be that potent inside of you. It should be that vital inside of you. Christ's path, Christ's decisions for my life, Christ's love and compassion to animate my intelligence, or death. Death would be better than not being able to live this life with the Christ animating your intelligence. That's how I perceive it. That's how I feel. That's my passion for Christ. We must find that. And there, as it's non-negotiable, you will have tended to the vessel to be something which is already of its own nature and behavior overcoming the world. And once it's in that space of acknowledging that you must overcome the world in your sin nature, there you can engage in whatever practice you find. Sometimes it's just to let the stars twinkle, let the dust settle wherever you're sitting, let the trees grow. Just allow it in awareness. And in that space, you will feel your vitality rising as your body relaxes and the tension leaves you. And as that takes place, this is where I have had out-of-body experiences. Mostly, I will say, however, but this can't be taught, it must be received by Christ. When I pray in tongues, or pray in spirit, or pray in light language, as people have come to call it, when I pray in this way, there is the most dominant and prominent time that I have seen the angelic. But this is not something anyone can teach you. This is something that must be born of the vessel uniting in surrender. There's no linear path. These things are often automatic spiritual bloomings and blossomings of the vessel. There's no linear control mechanism of mind to get you there. It's all about being dead so Christ can be born, free of a meanness. And what returns is you as your awareness connected to here and now alone, and there the living God will animate you. There the living God will take you, and you will become a human organism whose intelligence is animated by an anchor point of here and now. That is where Christ dwells. And your memories of Christ, your images of Christ, your religious speak of Christ can only interfere with that potent power here and now that wishes to take a hold. I shall leave it there. The angelic are among us. They are divine allies. They will continue to guard and guide humanity and assist us in this battle against their fallen counterparts. God bless, guys. I love you all.